Welcome back. In our last episode, we featured part of an interview with Leigh Ann Rippetoe, a high school friend of mine that is over 10 years clean after a battle with opioid abuse. Today, we continue that conversation, talking with Leigh Ann and other family members about what it was like, the challenges, and the recovery. We recently talked with Leigh Ann about the experience of addiction, and today we want to talk more about the impact near the pinnacle of the addiction and the road to recovery. Leigh Ann recalls how something that seemed relatively benign at the time nearly ended her life and destroyed her family.
When I look back on it, sometimes I have a hard time retracing the steps from the first moment to where I ended, but I know that it became a constant search for something to feel that way, if not that way better, just a little bit better. So when I became almost immune to the feeling of Percocet, there was morphine. So morphine was available, and when I became immune to the feeling of morphine, there were patches. So everything that I used built on the next. And when I became completely immune, when I say immune, I was no longer feeling high. Someone showed me how to snort a pill, and it took my addiction to another level. And at that point, the gates were wide open. So whatever I could find is what I used.
As addiction progresses, the addict pulls farther and farther from family and friends in an attempt to conceal the problem. Unfortunately, this does not protect these people from the ongoing decline. In addiction, relationships are strained and many are destroyed at the hands of illicit substances such as opioids.
No one truly knew what I was doing. Nothing had come out at that point. So I'd hidden it really, really well from them. But my relationships had all disappeared. I have a best friend, and the relationship with her it took a toll on that relationship. I just stopped calling. I stopped going around, and when she would come around, I would hide, because I knew if someone really truly looked at what I'd become, they could figure it out. If they could see really truly what was happening, they would figure it out. So it destroyed everything. It destroyed every relationship I had. During active addiction, it destroyed my entire family.
The first step to recovery is admitting there's a problem. Many addicts get to this point, but this by no means is the hardest part. The grip of addiction on our minds and bodies is difficult to break. As addicts attempt to break the grasp of the substance, the body and the substance fight back with withdrawal symptoms that can make recovery seem impossible.
And those were the most miserable days of my life. And if any addict would tell you, and if anyone would ever experience withdrawal, they would never tell someone, why can't you just quit? Why can't you just stop? Why don't you just put it away? Just put it down. Because that was said to me, just walk away from it. You can't just walk away. My choices were gone. They were gone. If I didn't use, I would be sick. So that drug ultimately had control.
Recovery is a lifelong commitment. Once addicted, the brain is always addicted, meaning that the person is one decision away from relapse. Leigh Ann understands that every day is a gift and that she must commit to a sober life on a daily basis.
Because when you start this program out, when you start on the journey to recovery, it's a minute at a time, maybe 5 minutes at a time, an hour at a time, 4 hours at a time. You take it that way because honestly, sometimes that's all you have. But by the end of the day, you can lay your head on that pillow clean and sober, and you wake up the next day and you start a new day. So when you hear just for today, that's the reason why, because putting too much on your plate a lot of times can lead to relapse. A lot of people can use those things as a reason to relapse. So daily walking out a lifestyle of recovery, and it's not, I don't think about using every day. I don't think about using every other day. Sometimes I go a long time without having any using thoughts or those things going through my head, but I'm 10 years clean. Day one, I had every minute I thought about using. So it's taken me to this point to get to where I just walk out a normal life. I live life on life's terms, knowing that addiction my disease is doing push-ups in the background, just waiting on me to screw up.
Leigh Ann's twin sister Laura has been with her throughout recovery and now helps others with addiction as well. The key message is commitment to the addict. Even though family and friends want someone to be sober and it can seem very difficult at times, it won't happen until the addict makes the decision to start the journey to recovery.
Don't give up on your loved one, as hard as it is, and I know the act of enabling is very easy to do because I did that with her, with Leigh Ann. I gave her money for her bills and things at the time when I didn't know it was for drugs, and even when I think I maybe assumed it was, I still wanted to help. There comes a point where you do cut them off for those things that enable them to continue to use and abuse drugs and alcohol. However, don't stop supporting, don't stop loving, and don't stop praying for your loved one or your friend or whoever it may be, because it may seem like there is no light at the end of the tunnel, but I promise you the day will come if you can just stand and be supportive in the best way you know how, that day will come that they can be set free from addiction. There truly is freedom from addiction, because I remember sitting there thinking, God, I can't wait for this all to be over. I felt like I was in the midst of hell watching my family be ripped apart. But the day finally came as I continued just to love Leigh Ann through her addiction and support her. And here we are 10 years later.
Leigh Ann's daughter Maddie is her only child that was old enough to recall the darkest days of her mother's addiction. And after living through such a difficult time, recovery has meant a unique yet ever-growing relationship.
I'm so proud of the journey she's taken just to get control back of her life, because that adds so much trust in our relationship. One big thing is trust now in our relationship, because when I was little I never trusted her because she let me down, and so trust is a huge thing with her and I, and honesty.
Leigh Ann knows that there are millions out there right now battling addiction, and that she has a message that can only come from someone that has walked the path of addiction and recovery.
The obstacles that are placed in front of you, day one, going back to just for today, there's still a possibility to recover. Recovery is possible. Placing the right things and the right people in your path is very crucial to recovery. And my message would probably be that, you know, our best days high cannot compare to our worst days when we're clean.
And yet, silence and isolation will lead to the deaths of thousands each year. Addiction must be brought into the light so we can all help battle the greatest drug epidemic in U.S. history. Until we treat addiction as a disease and understand the difficulties and challenges on the path to recovery and work towards recovery, we will continue to lose significant numbers of entire generations.
The anonymity of this disease, I think, is what's really killing us. People not willing to come forward or not coming forward to tell their story of sobriety for fear of the stigma and the backlash from what are people going to think, and you know, how did you get that way, and what is my job going to think, or what are my peers going to think? People just don't choose not to come forward. There are more recovering people than you know. They just choose not to tell their story.
The entirety of the Rippetoe interview will be available on our website at StantonMD.com.